Welcome to Sage Audio. Today let's cover how to multi-bus process, but first, if you have a mix that you need mastered, send it to us to receive a free mastered sample of it with the link in the description. Drum side image bus. First, let's look at using transient expansion on our drum bus's side image. After I create my drum bus by routing the output of each drum track to a singular bus, I'll create a send from this bus. On the auxiliary track made from the send, I'll insert the free plugin, MSED, and mute the mid image. Then I'll insert a transient expander, in this case, punctuate by Newfangled Audio, and expand the side image. Then I'll blend in the parallel side image with the fader. This creates transients that were very likely buried in the original signal, in turn creating an impressive and percussive side image. Let's take a listen to it. Overlapping performance bus. Sometimes you'll have performances that overlap, but you want to have the same processing. For example, you might want to let a guitar note ring out over the start of a new guitar passage. Now, instead of adding the same processing to both tracks, just change their outputs to a singular bus and process that bus. This way you'll save some CPU but still achieve the same sound that you wanted. Now, we don't need to take a listen to this one, but try it out and let me know if it saves you some time when you're mixing. If you're enjoying the video, hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It's free and it helps us bring you more videos. Master bus mid-side compression. I typically avoid processing my master bus when I'm mixing, but this one form of processing definitely has a beneficial sound. With a bus compressor that offers mid-side compression, I'll very subtly compress with a very low ratio and soft knee, but more importantly, with delinked triggering. Now, this will cause more compression to the mid image than the side, resulting in subtle dynamic stereo widening, which has a really pleasant sound. Let's take a listen.
I can feel it in my bones. Anything to add some more. Got me looking like a clown. Summer always let us down. Tell me I'll be what I eat.
Sidechain Gullfoss EQ on bus. Even if you've mixed really well, there's still going to be some competing signals in your mix. For this reason, I like to use Gullfoss EQs on my buses. Additionally, I'll sidechain competing signals so that the corrective equalization responds to similar and overlapping frequencies and subsequently creates some space. For example, if my vocal and instrument bus are competing too much, I could put Gullfoss on the vocal and sidechain the instrument bus before subtly increasing the settings. Let's take a listen.
I can feel it in my bones. Anything to add some more. Got me looking like a clown. Summer always let us down. Tell me I'll be what I eat.
Parallel vocal sibilance bus. Aggressive sibilance is kind of a pet peeve of mine, so what I like to do is control sibilance somewhat significantly on the individual vocals and again on the vocal bus, but then create a parallel track to further control it. To start off, this aux track needs a linear phase EQ, then I'll isolate the highs with an aggressive high-pass filter. Then I'll use some optical compression to make it dense before reverberating it with a bright, long plate type reverb. Lastly, I'll blend this softer, more enjoyable sounding sibilance back into the vocal. This way the vocal sounds balanced but not too shrill. Let's take a listen.
Got me looking like a clown. Summer always let us down. Tell me I'll be what I eat.
Parallel master bus processing. Creating a parallel track from your master bus or your stereo output would usually necessitate exporting the stereo mix and then processing it separately, but if we create identical sends from each one of our instrument buses, we can accomplish it within the regular mix session. After the buses are sent to the track, you can process with compression or saturation, all depending on what you're trying to accomplish, and then blend the parallel signal back in. Let's take a listen to it using some parallel compression.
I can feel it in my bones. Anything to add some more. Got me looking like a clown. Summer always let us down. Tell me I'll be what I eat.
Today's video is brought to you by LaLal AI, a next-generation neural network trained in separating and extracting various instruments and signals, all with minimal audio artifacts. To use it, simply upload your track, let the AI process it, and then preview the results. It can separate vocals from instrumentation, as well as drums, bass, electric guitar, and more. Additionally, they offer a vocal cleaning program that's great at attenuating unwanted noise from a vocal or dialogue. Right now, they're offering a free starter package, so check that out using the link in the description. Sidechain Dynamic EQ. Somewhat similar to Chapter 4, we could use EQ to help separate our signals, but this time in a more traditional way. I'll use a regular EQ on my vocal bus in this example, then create a dynamic band and center it over 3.5 kHz. Then I'll sidechain the instrument bus. Now, after triggering the band using the sidechain, I can dynamically amplify the presence of my vocal whenever the instrumental would usually mask it. Now, this is just one example, but you can try something similar between your drums and bass, or maybe to pull the vocal back if we use a negative range on the dynamic band that we made. So let's take a listen to the example that we covered.
I can feel it in my bones. Anything to have some more. Got me looking like a clown. Summer always let us down. Tell me I be what I eat.
If you're enjoying the channel, use the search box to watch more of our videos. Best Drum Bus Saturation. In my opinion, Saturn II gives us the best chance to create incredibly detailed and nuanced drum bus saturation. I'll use 3 bands to isolate different aspects of the performance and use the saturation type that best accents what I want. Then, I'll create an envelope follower and switch it to transient mode. Next, I'll link this follower to the drive amount of each band, causing dynamic saturation that responds to the drum's transients. Then, I'll switch the processing to mid-side and link the follower to the high frequencies drive band dial, so that the distortion dynamically shifts to the side image. This causes image expansion. I'll do the opposite to the low frequencies and make the distortion dynamically mono, causing the lows to be more focused. Lastly, I'll link the follower to my mix slider, changing the processor's overall effect based on the incoming signal. Creating all these program-dependent parameters results in saturation that's incredibly nuanced. Let's take a listen. Parallel Ambient Mic Emulation. This one uses parallel master bus processing like in Chapter 6, but it isn't necessary to include all of your buses if you don't want to. In short, I'll create the identical sends from my buses and then insert a room emulation, usually a studio emulation, onto the auxiliary track. After setting it to 100% and changing the reflections to emulate being farther away from the source by emphasizing late reflections, I'll blend the effect in with the auxiliary track's channel fader. This parallel signal acts a lot like an ambient mic, giving the mix a sense of cohesive space. Let's take a listen.
Got me looking like a clown. Summer always let us down. Tell me I be what I eat.
Randomization on buses. Last up, I'm going to insert UVI's Shade EQ on each one of my buses, using 4 EQ filters and 4 randomization modulators that are linked to these filters. I'll cause subtle randomization to the band's Q values, amplitude, and frequency. This causes overall randomization to the mix. Now, if done subtly enough, this randomization causes a movement to the mix that makes things more interesting for the listener. Let's take a listen.
I can feel it in my bones. Anything to have some more. Got me looking like a clown. Summer always let us down. Tell me I be what I eat.
If you have a mix that you need mastered, send it to us to receive a free mastered sample of it with the link in the description. Thank you so much for watching.